Welcome to the Jenna Ellis Show, sponsored by Legacy Precious Metals. There has never been a better time to invest in precious metals. Visit legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com. I'm Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis Tonight at 9 p.m. on the Salem News Channel. Join us as we talk all about the breaking news headlines today and over the weekend. First, with the IDF rescuing the 4 Israeli hostages. We know that there are many more. What does this portend for possible ceasefire or peace talks between Israel and Hamas? And how does the Biden-Harris administration play into this with the protests that we saw not only with Kamala Harris at her fundraiser, but also in front of the White House over the weekend? Josh Hammer will join us to discuss. Also, all things Trump trial. I'm going to give you my legal analysis of whether there may be a mistrial or even a judgment notwithstanding the verdict in the midst of that Facebook comment that the judge alerted both parties to. Very interesting. We'll also have John Cardillo here to discuss all this and more coming up tonight on Jenna Ellis Tonight. Hi friends, Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis Tonight, and we are experiencing instability at every level. Our government lacks leadership, and Bidenomics has been an utter disaster. The economy is in a fragile state. Inflation has been a constant issue. High interest rates have put significant pressure on the real estate market. There have been major bank failures, and many analysts say a stock market correction is likely overdue. We have global conflicts in Europe and the Middle East, and those have the potential to spread, but gold has soared to record highs even among the tensions. So there are so many reasons that Americans should consider wise investing and investments in gold and silver, and Legacy Precious Metals is the gold standard. I love Legacy Precious Metals because of their zero hassle, education first approach. They can help you roll your traditional IRA into a gold IRA or ship metals directly to your house. Go to legacypminvestments.com, download the free investor guide, and I have read it. There is so much valuable information there. Friends, now is the time to not roll the dice on your hard-earned money. Find out about the growth potential that is in gold and that gold offers you. Contact Legacy Precious Metals and make sure to tell them that I sent you. Good evening and welcome to Jenna Ellis Tonight. So breaking over the weekend on Saturday, 4 Israeli hostages were rescued by the IDF, and it was an amazing moment in the conflict between Israel and Hamas. And this headline coming from the AP saying, what does Israel's rescue of 4 captives and the killing of 274 Palestinians mean for truce talks? Israel's dramatic weekend rescue of 4 hostages from the Gaza Strip in an operation that local health officials say killed 274 Palestinians came at a sensitive time in the 8-month-old war as Israel and Hamas weigh a U.S. proposal for a ceasefire and the release of the remaining captives. Both sides face renewed pressure to make a deal. The complex rescue is unlikely to be replicated on a scale needed to bring back scores of remaining hostages, and it was a powerful reminder for Israelis that there are still surviving captives held in harsh conditions. Hamas now has 4 fewer bargaining chips. I think harsh conditions is putting it very mildly, but this post, among many others on social media, called out from a reporter, called out Israelis' response to this. The whole Jewish world is in floods of uncontrollable tears right now, tears of happiness, tears of pent-up fears and anxieties, and frustrated expectations letting loose. 4 hostages rescued alive. Our prayers remain for the remaining captives. It is just an ugly battle here. And so on the home front, there were a lot of protests at the White House. Joe Biden was not physically present, according to reports, but even some Hamas and pro-Palestinian, pro-terror protesters were holding up signs with too vulgar of language even to comment on here, including a bloodied head of Joe Biden, because the U.S. at least is still remaining with Israel as a strong, I think, Biden should be even stronger in terms of our reinforcement of Israel as an ally. And Vice President Kamala Harris was at a speech for her campaign, or Joe Biden's campaign in Michigan. She got heckled by some pro-terrorist protesters, and this was her response. Listen to this.
We mourn all the innocent lives that have been lost in Gaza, including those tragically killed today. For the past 8 months, President Biden and I have been working every day to bring this conflict. I'm speaking right now, and I value and respect your voice, but I'm speaking right now.
Josh Hammer is the senior editor at large for Newsweek and the host of the Josh Hammer Show, which is an excellent podcast. I highly, highly recommend it. And he joins me now. So, Josh, does this incentivize any sort of ceasefire talks, or where do we go from here, knowing now with these 4 hostages that were rescued, that there are still so many more? I mean, this is just tragic. And like I said, I think the AP, just reporting these are harsh conditions doesn't even remotely cover it.
Yeah, well, there was a lot wrong with that Associated Press clip, as there was a lot with mainstream media reporting over the weekend in general. First of all, this idea that 274 Palestinian Arabs were killed, we have absolutely no idea of knowing whether or not that's true. That is literally Gaza Health Ministry provided information. And, I feel a need to remind the mainstream media, not that they will listen to me, although I do work at Newsweek, but every time that you are reporting a Gaza Health Ministry provided statistic, you are literally providing a Hamas talking point. And in fact, the United Nations just a few weeks ago had to severely round down the number of estimated casualties of Arabs in Gaza over the course of this conflict, because they assessed finally that the Hamas provided data was actually wildly overstating things. So that's the very first problem here. The second problem is the fact that yet again, we see hostages being held in so-called civilian apartments, which raises the obvious question that many of us have been asking for a very long time here is, the media, politicians talk about this very, very clear dividing line here between militants and civilians. Well, it's really actually not that clear. You're not dealing here with a state actor where you have uniformed military men, sailors, Marines, soldiers, and so forth. This is not World War II era Germany, where you very clearly could tell who was wearing the uniform of the Third Reich and who was flying in the Wehrmacht and who was just an innocent civilian, in Frankfurt or Berlin. This is not like that. Hamas wears plainclothes actors here. Hamas was democratically elected by the people of Gaza, and they are keeping people hostage in these so-called refugee camps in civilian apartments. And it's actually even worse than that. You have journalists from Al Jazeera, which is Qatari-funded, Qatari-disseminated Islamist propaganda. You have journalists from Al Jazeera and from another outlet called the Palestine Chronicle, which is funded by Qatar and Turkey, which are apparently, their journalists were literally the ones who were holding 3 out of the 4 hostages. So the whole thing is utterly insane. I will not be waiting necessarily to hear when the Biden-Harris administration will condemn the Al Jazeera and Palestine Chronicle journalists who are holding these people hostage in violation of all of the rules of war, the Geneva Convention, you name it there. But when it comes to the ceasefire deal that you asked about, Jenna, I think the fact that Israel has found that there are hostages alive necessarily is going to incentivize them, as it should, to finish the job, to actually double down and put on that tunnel vision, to tune out what the so-called international community, what the United Nations, what the ICC, the ICJ, what Biden and Harris, tune out all of that and just finish the job in Gaza once and for all, to get rid of the remaining Hamas battalions in Rafah, that's their southernmost stronghold, and to double down on trying to get the hostages out there. Israel will not rest until they can rest for sure that all the hostages are either safely evacuated or tragically they will have to at some point perhaps say that more have died. But until they can make that final assessment, they're not going to stop.
Yeah, so well said, Josh. And I couldn't agree more that we need to take everything that is reported from the source and actually look at that and say, okay, can we trust this source? Because you're right. I mean, the AP and other outlets are simply repeating the Hamas talking points. And the actual number, while the AP reported at 274, I mean, it went up or down depending on which news outlet you read. And so I love the Babylon Beast headline that said, a billion is now coming out, that there were a billion of civilian casualties, just making fun of the fact that nobody really actually knows the number. But let's talk about the number of hostages. Is there any sort of credible reporting in terms of how many are still left? That you're absolutely right, Israel needs to just go in and ensure that they guarantee their safety and rescue.
So the estimates that are typically floated around are that there are 120 remaining. I mean, we don't know. I mean, this is obviously just an estimate. It's amazing intelligence, by the way, Jenna, that they were able to actually track down these four. The rumor that I heard, I've not corroborated, but the rumor that I've heard from various sources is that both American and British intelligence were actually working with the IDF and Mossad, working with the Israelis to actually track down those hostages. So, by the way, if U.S. intelligence, if the CIA was actually assisting Mossad in tracking down the hostages, that's doubly interesting, right? Because that means that the U.S. is actually working with Israel, as we should, as their closest ally in the world, behind the scenes. That's kind of juxtaposed with this Biden-Harris campaign talk where they're trying to throw Israel under the bus, basically just for the cameras, basically just to appease their far left base. So they're trying to have it both ways. The Democrats have been trying to have it both ways for the entirety of this conflict. They're not going to be able to do it. I mean, the public says, based on all the polling that we have available, that they do not approve of Joe Biden's handling of the conflict in Gaza because he's trying to split this Solomonic baby of sorts, and he's making everyone unhappy simultaneously. You saw the people protesting there, Kamala Harris. Those are the people who are screaming genocide Joe. These are kind of the people who are openly supporting Hamas. Then, of course, you have the majority of Democrats, or at least the majority of Democrat donors who still support Israel. So the Democrats are between a rock and a hard place on this one. It is ripe for political exploitation if Donald Trump and Republicans choose to do it. From a U.S. perspective, though, politics aside, this is so shockingly simple. The beauty of Donald Trump's foreign policy in the Middle East, which was very successful, is that it was actually really, really simple, that you could explain it to a kindergartner. When it comes to foreign policy in the Middle East, what works is to stand by your friends and to punish your enemies. What the Obama administration did for 8 years and the Biden administration is doing now is the exact opposite of that, is to punish your friends and reward your enemies. It turns out that when you do the latter, Jenna, you have regional chaos, conflagration, and jihad emboldened all throughout the region. When you do the former, you have transformative peace like the Abraham Accords.
Yeah. And so where does the Speaker of the House go with this? Because we know that Mike Johnson is very pro-Israel and is a committed Christian as well. And so can Congress tip the scale for the Biden-Harris administration to actually remain pro-Israel?
Congress has the power of the purse. I mean, that is Congress. You're a lawyer, as you know, obviously. I mean, that is Congress's most powerful tool when it comes to foreign conflicts. I mean, to kind of use a way of comparison, I mean, that's actually how the war in Vietnam ended. Congress just stopped funding it. I mean, they used the power of the purse to basically end the war in Vietnam. So the power of the purse, when it comes to foreign policy, can be very powerful. Ultimately, though, it's tough. I mean, Republicans do control the House. Mike Johnson is a speaker, very pro-Israel, a committed Christian, obviously. But they have a very, very, very slim majority there. I mean, it's like 2 or 3 seats, and it's changing. I mean, it's a tough position to be in there. So overall, I'm not sure how much leverage House Republicans actually have over the day-to-day policy happening in Gaza. A lot of it actually is presidential, unfortunately, because Joe Biden is just continuing to play domestic politics and trying to appease his radical left-wing base in a presidential election year where any president worth his salt should have other concerns at the forefront of his mind.
Yes, so well said. And we're under a minute, but the debate is happening at the end of this month. Do you anticipate that this is going to be one of the central issues there?
I'm not sure if it will be a central issue, but it definitely should get raised. I hope foreign policy in general is raised. I mean, both the war in Israel and the war in Ukraine, of course. China obviously is a major issue. Look, Americans ultimately, Jenna, I care most about domestic issues, as they probably should. I mean, inflation, crime, cost of living, economy, the border. These are the issues that probably will get most raised. But there are multiple hotspots around the world, and foreign policy absolutely has to come up. And Donald Trump should take advantage of that and reaffirm that he is standing shoulder to shoulder with Bibi Netanyahu in Israel.
Yeah, so well said. And I hope that Donald Trump does stand firm and is pro-Israel on that debate stage. But Josh Hammer, always appreciate your insight and analysis. We'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis Tonight. Well, friends, you might have heard that Mike Lindell and MyPillow no longer have the support of their box stores or shopping channels the way that they used to. They've been part of this cancel culture, so they want to pass along the savings directly to you by having a $25 extravaganza. I love that word, extravaganza. When Mike started MyPillow, it was just a one-product company. With the help of his dedicated employees, they now have hundreds of products, some you may not even know about. To get the word out, I want to invite my listeners to check out their $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-use MyPillows are just $25. MyPillow sandals, also awesome, only $25. Their 6-pack towel sets are $25. And brand new 4-pack dish towels, you guessed it, just $25. For the first time ever, the premium MyPillows with the all-new Giza fabric, just $25. And orders over $75 will receive free shipping too. This amazing offer won't last long. Go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Jenna, or call 800-564-8475 today. That's 800-564-8475, or go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Jenna. Well, the National Republican Party has largely embraced the LGBTQ agenda because they say they want to create a quote unquote big tent. There still remains committed conservative Christians who are rejecting Pride Month because, let's face it, we should as conservatives. So, of course, that outrages the leftists. And this article coming from The Hill with the headline saying Colorado GOP calls for burning of pride flags. Colorado's Republican Party this week called for LGBTQ pride flags to be burned, describing LGBTQ Americans as, quote, godless groomers in a fundraising email and multiple social media posts railing against Pride Month. Obviously, The Hill has an agenda. Quote, the month of June has arrived, and once again, the godless groomers in our society want to attack what is decent, holy, and righteous so they can ultimately harm our children, reads the email. The party's message, which includes a link to a sermon led by Mark Driscoll, an evangelical pastor known for his anti-LGBTQ views, or I would say pro-Christian views, is signed by State Republican Party Chair Dave Williams, who is also a candidate for Congress. Representative Williams also spoke very strongly about his Christian faith and had this message to say at a GOP congressional debate. Listen to this.
Again, I do not care what some pride organizers think about what we're doing. What I care about is protecting our children. What I care about is advancing biblical principles. And what I care about is what the Lord has to say. If that costs me this election, if that costs me everything, so be it, because my reward isn't here. I don't know about Jeff. I'm not looking at June of 2024. I'm looking for eternity. That's where I'm headed, and if I do everything right and I get crucified for it, so be it, because I'm not greater than my master, Jesus Christ.
A lot of strong applause there. Well, Representative Dave Williams joins me now. And Dave, I have to say, I commend you strongly for standing up so firmly for what should be a position of the entire Republican Party. Why is it that there are so few Republicans that in 2024 are unwilling to take this very clear stand against an evil agenda?
Because ultimately, I think they're afraid of the press, the pundits, the cultural elites in this country. They care more about the opinions of man than they do of God. That's what it comes down to. Look, I don't mind working with anyone in the LGBTQ community to limit government, lower taxes, secure the border, protect the unborn. Like, if those are things that you want to be a part of, I don't care who you are or what you identify as, come help us do that. But what we're talking about right now is a Pride Month that has devolved into an absolute circus and agenda that has, very clear goals, which is to groom children and to encourage them into confusion so that they switch their genders, which they really can't. But that involves chemical castration and genital mutilation. And that's something we should be standing up against. It should be the easiest thing we can stand up against. If you can't stand up to folks that want to harm your children, then you have no business being in politics to begin with. So get out.
Yeah. So well said. And I think you're very right to point out that we can collaborate with people, even that we disagree with. I mean, even, feminists and Democrats and, others would agree on some issues that we also stand for, but that doesn't mean that we need to embrace their ideology or their platforms and make it our own just to get their vote. And so by standing firm for what conservatives and what the Republican Party should be all about makes sense. And you're absolutely right as well that this should be the easiest thing to stand up for. And in Colorado, which is my former home state, I mean, I've known you for close to a decade probably. And when you were in the House legislature, you always stood firm on issues that were advancing religious freedom, advancing the truth, advancing pro-life in the state legislature. And in Colorado, now that it's fully Democrat controlled, at least statewide, they're advancing such ridiculous things like being able to change the gender on one's birth certificate that have serious ramifications beyond what the Rainbow Mafia would like to suggest as, just identity. But it actually has real world clash when you look at things like the 303 Creative case, the Masterpiece Cake Shop case, when the Democrats are trying to say, well, you're just bigoted if you won't embrace all of this. And yet the Republican Party seems to just not only ignore this, but they're failing to stand firm, yet we're trying to still be the party of conservative values. I don't see that persisting into 2024 and beyond.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you why we're not talking about this, because when we talk about it, we actually win. When you have people like Joe Rogan, who's not a conservative, agreeing that we shouldn't be indoctrinating children or letting them engage in life-altering procedures, I think we have a winning message. When you have people like Bill Maher, for God's sake, that guy is a Democrat who is against very much what's being pushed on children, and the over sexualization, or not even just the sexualization of children through these activities and behaviors within Pride Month. I think that's a signal to us that maybe we should be talking to that very issue to swing voters and even Democrats who are just wanting some normalcy. I mean, it should not be a controversy that we want to make sure that kids are learning about reading, writing, and arithmetic, not gender studies from some woke activists in a classroom.
Yeah, and that should be the easiest thing to stand up for. And yet the Republican Party on a national scale is failing. And we're taking seriously all of these ridiculous names that I'm sure you get called every day as well, and especially in light of this email. But you also sent another email just today that reinforced that you're not going to apologize. And so what kind of, I mean, we understand the backlash from leftists, but what kind of pushback, if any, have you gotten from internally the Colorado GOP, or have most of those members been as loudly applauding you as they did at the debate?
I mean, there are a ton of folks who are in the base of our party that just want good, conservative, biblical principles advanced in government and politics, especially for the party. But we also have weak Republicans, mainly establishment types or moderates, that want me to resign. They're calling for my resignation. They're even seeking to try and remove me from my position. And as I said at the debate, I'll say here, I don't care. If I get kicked out of politics over this fight, so be it. I think this is the right fight, the right hill to die on. And you know what? I'll go hang out with my family and go raise them, and we'll go do something else. But if no one steps up and stands against this evil, then we're going to definitely lose this fight. And that's the crazy thing, is that we don't have to. People are with us. And if we just are bold enough and we have the courage of our conviction, then we're going to win.
Yeah, well, like I said at the top, I mean, I commend you for standing so strongly. And I wish that every conservative would have that same outlook, that if we lose, it's because we've lost the culture, and politics is downstream from culture, but we still need to stand firm regardless. And you're right. I mean, politics isn't the only thing that people can do. I mean, I've stood up for truth as well. And, now I'm doing media, and I'm actually a lot happier than when I was in politics. So, there's that. But in terms of your congressional campaign, if you are elected from Colorado to go to Congress, then how are you going to take this message and fight for the truth in Congress? And we only have about a minute left.
Well, I mean, there's a lot that we can do. I was endorsed by the American Principles Project. They're working on a whole host of policy solutions that start to tackle this issue. I think one of the things that we really do need to tackle is the proliferation of pornography, especially as it relates to human trafficking, and trying to make sure that minors have no access to that. and doing what we can on that level. Because that's a part of this fight. It's not just what you're seeing in Pride. There's so many other things that are connected to this that harm children, and I'm proud to work with them and other conservatives to make sure that we're protecting kids and protecting them, especially from this kind of smut.
Great. Well, Dave Williams running out of Colorado District 5. Support him, support his campaign and his stand for truth. We'll be right back with more. Hi friends, Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis Tonight, and we are experiencing instability at every level. Our government lacks leadership, and Bidenomics has been an utter disaster. The economy is in a fragile state. Inflation has been a constant issue. High interest rates have put significant pressure on the real estate market. There have been major bank failures, and many analysts say a stock market correction is likely overdue. We have global conflicts in Europe and the Middle East, and those have the potential to spread, but gold has soared to record highs even among the tensions. So there are so many reasons that Americans should consider wise investing, and investments in gold and silver, and legacy precious metals is the gold standard. I love Legacy Precious Metals because of their zero hassle, education first approach. They can help you roll your traditional IRA into a gold IRA or ship metals directly to your house. Go to legacypminvestments.com, download the free investor guide, and I have read it. There is so much valuable information there. Friends, now is the time to not roll the dice on your hard-earned money. Find out about the growth potential that is in gold and that gold offers you. Contact Legacy Precious Metals and make sure to tell them that I sent you. Let's turn now to the latest in the ongoing Trump New York City trial saga. First, this headline coming from the Post Millennial that Alvin Bragg, the DA in that case, refuses to testify before the House on the Trump trial until after the July 11th sentencing, calls it, quote, detrimental to fair administration of justice. The letter stated that participating in such a public hearing would be, quote, potentially detrimental to, quote, protecting the fair administration of justice in the case. Now, I can't even get through that without laughing because it is so remarkably stupid for Alvin Bragg, who has gone after a political persecution of Donald Trump, to now suddenly be so concerned about, fair and impartial and the fair administration of justice. And he can't possibly give the same sentencing recommendations to the court on July 11th if he actually has to come and testify in front of the House Judiciary Committee or the Oversight Committee. I mean, what is he so afraid of, that they're going to ask questions and that they would elicit testimony from Alvin Bragg that would show that this is a sham trial and potentially influence how the judge is going to make that sentence? I don't know, but I think that Alvin Bragg needs to go in front of that committee as soon as possible. But ahead of July 11th, there were also reports over the weekend that said that Donald Trump is going to be sitting down via Zoom with his attorney, with a probation officer out of New York City. This is totally standard. It is routine for a pre-sentence investigation report when there is potential jail time on the line. That is something that in criminal cases, when there is a conviction, is routine. It is supposed to be an unbiased recommendation for the court to take into consideration, along with listening to the arguments from both sides. So we'll see about July 11th. And meanwhile, this headline also coming down over the weekend from Fox News. Mershon called out for warning about troll comments suggesting the Trump jury was compromised. The judge presiding over former President Trump's New York criminal trial is facing scrutiny for risking the credibility of his own jury after he sent a letter to the defense team about a comment posted to the court's public Facebook page. It implied one of the jurors discussed the guilty verdict with family prior to the trial's conclusion. The comment was made by a user who described himself as a quote-unquote professional blank poster. Kind of crap poster, leading some to wonder why Mershon alerted Trump's counsel without investigating the matter more thoroughly. In a letter Friday, Judge Juan Mershon told Trump defense attorneys and Manhattan prosecutors, quote, today the court became aware of a comment that was posted to the Unified Court System's public Facebook page, which I now bring to your attention. In the comment, the user, who calls himself Michael Anderson, states, quote, my cousin is a juror and says Trump is getting convicted. Thank you, folks, for all your hard work. A comment made by the same user on a different post said, quote, "Thank you for all your hard sick against the MAGA crazies. My cousin is a juror on Trump's criminal case, and they're going to convict him tomorrow, according to her." So this is really interesting, and I think both sides rush to conclusions with, of course, the MAGA and the Trump supporters saying automatic mistrial, this is a guarantee, and of course everyone on the left panicking at this point and saying no, of course this has to be a post that it lacks credibility. And I think Jonathan Turley said it well, that he is very skeptical of this post actually having credibility and this commenter actually being a cousin of a juror. But it does make sense why the judge alerted the parties, probably because this post was on the court's website, is my guess. I don't think that the court is out there scouring every Facebook and social media page for commentary of people who might have a comment on social media. But if in fact a juror violated the court's orders, talked to family, and then that comes to light, whether it's through a social media post or anything else being made public, then absolutely the Trump team needs to be notified. And the judge in this instant, he's actually doing his job. So what happens next? Well, the credibility of this post does have to be examined, whether or not they can actually find this user, and then likely a motion by the Trump team will be forthcoming. I would expect that before the July 11th sentencing date. And they're not just going to go for a mistrial. They're going to go for a judgment notwithstanding the verdict, meaning a full acquittal, because double jeopardy is already attached once a jury is impaneled. Wouldn't that be an amazing conclusion to this trial? But we'll be right back with more with commentary right after this. Well, all of the legal issues aside, the political fallout from Donald Trump's conviction out of New York and heading into the July 11th sentencing remains pretty much as anticipated. This is the latest Quinnipiac poll that says less than 1 week after former President Donald Trump became the first U.S. president to be convicted of a felony, he holds a slight lead over President Joe Biden, 49 to 44%, in a head-to-head matchup in the battleground state of Georgia. So pretty thin margin. Both sides are using this to their advantage, though. This coming from Washington Examiner. The DNC launches first a billboard blasting Trump as a, quote, convicted felon. The Democrat National Committee unveiled a new billboard campaign in Arizona, a key battleground state, labeling former President Donald Trump a, quote unquote, convicted felon following a guilty verdict during his New York hush money trial last week. And Axios is also pointing out that, quote, in their own way, Trump and Republicans are also embracing the verdict, using it to juice their donor base and make direct appeals to Black voters over their shared frustration with the criminal justice system. They also want to harness the anger that is coursing through the Republican Party and direct it toward voter turnout on election day. So joining me now to discuss all this and more is John Cardillo, who's former NYPD and a GOP strategist. So John, I think that we all expected both sides to use this predictably to their advantage. The left is going to just say convicted felon, and the right is basically saying, so what? So does this actually move the needle either way?
Nah, I don't think so. I mean, I think it helps Trump with fundraising, and we saw that. We know, right? They raised a tremendous amount of money. This whole constant chasing of the Black vote with these gimmicks to me is really a waste of time and resources, because institutionally they vote Democrat when the unions get their foot soldiers out there and ballot harvest. And so if Republicans were serious about turning minority communities over to the R side, to the GOP, they would invest more money in the ground game. And I just don't see the RNC doing that. So I don't think you're ever going to get enough of these anecdotal rappers here and there and athletes to say we're backing Trump. Yeah, sure, because they've known him for years and they hang out together. But I don't think that's representative of the Black vote en masse. But both sides are using this to their advantage. I mean, it's not like Trump's shying away from it. He was selling T-shirts with his mugshot on them. And it tends to work with his base, those small dollar donors. So I think it's a fool's errand for the Democrats, especially in Arizona, where I think Gallego is going to just trounce Carrie Lake because she's a horrible candidate. And Arizonans already rejected her. So I think it's going to be net neutral for both sides in the end, except for Trump with the massive fundraising.
Yeah, and which does count for a lot, actually. And so do you anticipate that changing at all after July 11th if Donald Trump is sentenced to jail time. I mean, but even if he's only sentenced to probation, I mean, if he transfers that to the state of Florida, as I well know, you have to ask for permission anytime to leave the state. I mean, this will have a dramatic effect on his ability to campaign. So is that going to not move the needle in terms of the court of public opinion, but overall the campaign strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I've got two sets of neighbors here, one in their 40s. Now, this is anecdotal, but we're here in Florida, right in South Florida. And one pair in their 40s, the other is in their early 70s, but in very good shape. And they both voted for Trump, and both are saying they don't know if they're even going to vote in the presidential. They'll vote down ballot because they can't reconcile voting for somebody who was convicted of a crime. So they're not really paying attention to lawfare. These are not hyper-political people. Right. And I'm afraid that if this judge, I mean, I don't think they would have gone down this road with this much pomp and circumstance and that sham of a New York City trial. This judge has been completely off the reservation. But I don't understand how people can believe this judge isn't going to impose some kind of sentence.
And yeah. I think that you're right that that the Democrats wouldn't come this far if they weren't intent on going all the way and seeing Trump actually in prison. But right now, he remains out and he's doing some of these rallies, and he had one in New Jersey. And of course, the mainstream media is going to make mountains out of molehills. But this was something that I thought was actually funny on both sides. This is a cut from Trump's rally. Listen to this.
By the way, isn't that breeze nice? Do you feel the breeze? Because I don't want anybody going on me. We need every voter. I don't care about you. I just want your vote. I don't care. See, now the press will take that and they'll say he said a horrible thing.
Well, John, of course the press took that and said he said a horrible thing, because I think he intended to say something that the press would take as horrible, and then he could just say, well, I was just joking, and look at the fake news press. And so this just is a continuation of something that Donald Trump has done since 2015, which is to manipulate the media and try intentionally to get them to write these headlines that he can then say is fake news. So do you think that he was intentionally trying to frame it in a way so that they would be outraged, or was this kind of he realized what he said and then had to fill the gap and say, oh, well, and of course, mainstream media is going to take that out of context?
You never know. I mean, I don't know if it was a troll or just honesty. But look, it's not unique to Trump. I tell everybody, politicians don't really care about you. I mean, sure, they want your vote and they want the power, and they're going to do what they need to do for you to support them or donate to them or reelect them. But these people who get so insanely emotionally attached to any politician come off to me as cultish. I don't care what side of the aisle they're on. I don't care who the politician is. And so is he really saying anything every politician doesn't feel? I mean, there are a few guys out there who I think genuinely care about their constituents, like Chip Roy is one that comes to mind. And to a degree, Ron DeSantis, but Ron is more of a manager. He wants to manage and have really solid end results and be a good fiscal steward of taxpayer money. But I don't think candidates and politicians, deeply and emotionally connect to every one of their voters. So sure, it could have been a troll. It might not have been, but is it a do about something? I really don't think so. I think hopefully it opened people's eyes to the fact that it's a very transactional relationship between Americans and elected officials.
Yeah, really well said. And I couldn't agree more that, most people in elected positions or candidates are politicians these days, not statesmen. And so it's very rare to even care sincerely about issues, not just getting elected and campaign promises that then they disregard, but it's even, vastly fewer people still that even know many of their constituents, much less genuinely care about them. And so, I agree with you that this is a moment perhaps of honesty, but that's okay. I mean, I don't expect politicians actually to genuinely care about me individually. I want them to care about the issues that matter most, the policy that matters most, and to actually do and steward their job well according to conservative principles and values. I don't necessarily care if they know me personally. So, this is just one of those moments, though, where we step back, we look at the Obama campaign, we look at Trump, we look at some of these that on both sides do have a cult-like following in the sense that they can't criticize that individual. They put them up as that is their highest person that they care about. They follow everything. I mean, we have people like go to Trump rallies every single one. I mean, it's like it's a sports team for them, which I would call some of those people cult-like in terms of sports. So maybe we ought to focus more on policy and the issues that matter instead of the personalities.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I know some people down here that have been to so many Trump, they never miss one. They know the script by heart, and they will mock each other for missing a word. It's kind of creepy. And as you note, it was the same way with Obama. When Obama was elected, we saw those kids in schools singing these, Barack Hussein Obama songs, and they were very socialist. They reminded me of the old Soviet Union or like Nazi youth. It was just weird. It was just very, very weird. I think whenever you worship a politician to that degree and you start treating them like a rock star or some other exalted figure, it's very dangerous for America. And this isn't unique to Trump. I think Obama really ushered this in. So it was a really good point to bring that up, Jenna. But I'm not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of the idol worship with any politician.
Yeah, same. And I think that poses a danger for people who are engaged in politics just for the personality on any side. I mean, like we've been saying, this isn't exclusive to Trump or even Obama or, any particular politician. We need to be principled conservatives, and we need to engage our civil government knowing that this is all about the issues and it's about all of us. Ultimately, we the people. That's what it should be about. And we should support the candidates and the politicians that will fulfill their duty the most. And I do see Governor DeSantis, Thomas Massey, you mentioned Chip Roy. I mean, there are a few out there, but they're few in between. I wish there were a lot more. But John, we're already out of time. Thanks so much. And we'll be right back with kind of the weirdest headline from this week right after this. And finally tonight, in one of the most bizarre headlines, I mean, if it was not enough to have a morbidly obese woman winning a beauty pageant in Maryland, and then also a transgender man, so literally a biological man, also winning a beauty pageant. This headline coming from the Post Millennial that says 10 finalists chosen in first artificial intelligence or AI influencer beauty pageant. Yes, the inaugural Miss AI beauty pageant this month will feature models created using artificial intelligence, thereby expanding the scope of beauty pageants beyond human contestants. Do we really need this? The competitors don't actually exist in the real world. They are found on social media, mostly Instagram, where they appear as photorealistic images of beautiful young women created through proprietary and off-the-shelf AI technologies, NPR reported. So we have some B-roll of the actual photos of these four Instagram AI models that we'll put up on the screen for you. And let's welcome in our guest, Rob Salvador, who's a GOP strategist and has a tech company in Florida. So Rob, you know your way around AI. My question is, what good on earth does this do to have an AI generated beauty pageant? This is, according to the left, now just reinforcing the stereotypes of beauty. And I can't wait until probably next year when the first, trans AI image enters the contest. And then, we'll really have some problems. But what's your response to all this?
Yeah, well, great to see you again, Jenna. And I promise I'm not crying here. The sun just got really bright on me. But also with what they're doing with AI and messing up beauty pageants, I could be crying as well. So don't mind that. But yeah, I mean, some of the things that they're doing with AI nowadays, obviously it's going to be, it's going to impact society a lot because it's hard to tell what's real and what's fake nowadays. I have less of an issue with, making pretend cartoons for a pageant that at least people know, they're probably AI generated or they understand that. The bigger issue, like you mentioned, is what they're allowing in some of these pageants nowadays, Miss USA and whatnot. You mentioned, a morbidly obese woman just won one of the competitions. And then up in Maryland, a transgender just won Miss Maryland USA. So unfortunately, this is just another example of the left trying to normalize some of these things that, while to each their own, how everyone lives their individual lives, it's not healthy to normalize, transgender and things like that, winning, beauty pageants that were supposed to be for, women, biological women, and that's not fair to them. So it is unfortunate to see more of this creep into society. And I think if people don't stand up against it, you're going to see more and more of that. But between crazy beauty pageant winners and AI beauty pageants and whatnot, we're definitely moving into a different type of world.
Yeah, very uncharted territory. But, it's so fascinating to me from a cultural commentary standpoint that, it used to be the feminists and, some of these that were against beauty pageants because it was a commentary that, women were only valued for their looks and, they all have to fit this model of being, stick thin and having plastic surgery, maybe, some of these things to make them fit this caricature of what beauty is. And yet now, the left is willingly putting their own contestants in, I think, purposefully to destroy the concept of feminine beauty. And that's the danger here of AI, is not just that it's creating these kind of caricatures, but it really is a social commentary on femininity. And from just the standpoint of truth, there needs to be a clear contrast in society between what we value in terms of masculinity and femininity, and very clear distinctions.
Yes, I agree 100%. I definitely think that some of the things you're seeing now are allowing people to toe that line more. So I do think it's important, that you're able to find a way to know when you're dealing with, generative AI and advanced types of AI, because that can be used for a lot of nefarious purposes for people who might not be familiar with these technologies and what they can do. So you do see certain movements in states and state governments and even in elections trying to identify when there is generative AI and other tools like that being utilized. So I definitely agree. I think the issue that a lot of people have and that, might be uncomfortable to some people is we are moving into this new world, and the chasm may have already been crossed in that, generative AI is here and it's going to be hard to put back in the box. So instead of trying to get rid of it, again, I think what's more important is we actually start to find a way to, notify people of when they're looking at generative AI and things like that. And again, apologize, I'm not crying at this issue. I'm crying because of the sun that's very bright in my eyes. But
we can cry and weep over the culture. I think that that's absolutely valid. But Rep. Salvador, we're already almost out of time. But I agree with you. And it's been fascinating to me to see Facebook and Instagram having the AI generated labels that you can put on, and people need to be very careful what they believe in terms of photographs. But there's so much more that we don't have time for. We're already out of time for Jenna Ellis tonight. Make it a great night.